for reference, I was there for a year and a half, and I cooked my own meal twice in a year and a half. Because I went to restaurants we finished at 8 p.m. and there was 10 of us that had just finished our shift, and we go to a bar, we go to a place every day. And because the cost of living was that, I could do that every day. I can't do that in the UK. I can't go out every day in the UK. For one, I can't afford it. But in China, I could. And these were nice places. You know, we were going to rooftop bars every night.
Hello, you're listening to I Taught English Abroad, a podcast by the TEFL org. My name is Ewan Davidson, and in this podcast series, we're going to be talking to people who have taught English as a foreign language, find out where it's taken them, and what they've learned from it. So whether you're an aspiring TEFL teacher, you're studying a TEFL course, or you're interested in teaching English more generally, this is a podcast for you. We'll be covering a range of topics each week, from travel and accommodation to the nitty-gritty of teaching, all while taking a look at global teaching and the quirks of TEFL life. Now, it's an alright day in Glasgow. Scotland actually won a game of football last night, and it gets even better because this episode we've got Luke Bartsch as our guest. Now, Luke describes his career as such. He says, "My first job was with a gardening company. I then moved into an office role as a logistics manager for a year before getting promoted to a contracts manager. I worked at that for a few years, dealing with contracts with housing associations until I was 21 and decided I wanted to get a degree. So I moved to Brighton and completed my degree in music production. Once I graduated, I didn't have any idea what I wanted to do next. This was when I found the world of TEFL and decided that I wanted to work and travel around Asia. I took my TEFL course online, and as soon as I completed the course, decided I wanted to live and work in China. I managed to get a teaching position and flew out to Shanghai. I worked there for over a year before COVID forced me to come back to the UK. During the lockdown, I taught online for the same company I worked for in Shanghai. And finally, he decided he wanted to stop teaching, but stay within the TEFL industry. And because Luke says he's got previous experience in contracts management, he wanted to be in either recruitment or business development. In his words, I found the TEFL org and started as a business development executive. And I've been working there for a year and a half now. He says, I really enjoy my job now, as I saw firsthand the benefit of a TEFL course, and I'm passionate at being with a company that can offer this as career development. So it should also be pointed out before we get started that Luke has exquisite taste in hip-hop. We'll get to that later on. Luke, how's it going?
Great. Hello, everyone. Hello, Ewan. How's it going?
Yeah, as I say, not bad. Yeah, Scotland beat Ukraine last night, so at the time of recording, I'm quite happy. I hope you're happy with that intro.
Yeah, no, that sort of sums it up, basically.
Excellent.
Crazy you could put your life into sort of a couple of paragraphs.
Well, you've had a life, mate. That's more than most. So there's something that really jumps out from the intro that you wrote for us. I'm sure listeners are going to want to know, how did you come to that decision to take up teaching English?
It wasn't something that I took too long in deciding. I think once I finished my degree, I had my degree in music production, and I didn't really have anywhere to go with it. There's only so much DJing, and there's only so much you could do. You could have moved into sort of like working as an engineer for a studio, but I tried that when I did some like work experience during my course, and if I'm honest, I hated it. So I was like, I don't want to do that. I can't use my degree. And then that's when I just started researching what I could do. I always knew I wanted to travel. I didn't have a chance to go on a gap year because I went straight from school to work and then decided to do a degree. So it was very much like looking online, saying, yeah, I want to travel. Could I see myself teaching? Maybe. So I just did the course and thought, why not try? So it wasn't something that was heavily researched. It was more, I'm just going to have a go, which I think isn't, it seems quite common from the teachers I met abroad, and they were from America, Canada, South Africa. They all just sort of wanted to try something new. So you get sort of teachers from all backgrounds, all cases. So yeah, that's sort of how it started.
Cool. So you said that you wanted to travel around Asia. What was it about China that was so alluring to you specifically? Because obviously, as a sort of destination, Shanghai speaks for itself, let alone as a place to teach English. But what was it about China specifically, a sort of really, really big city, China, that drew you in?
I think it was more like you hear so much about China, yet you don't really see it. And I wanted to see it firsthand.
Mhm.
Similar to like people that go to North Korea. Why did they go to North Korea? Because they wanted to see it for themselves. I had heard things about China and I sort of wanted to go and see. I also did a bit of research on countries to do it, and it was relatively low work hours compared to some countries, relatively good pay. So
Mhm.
it sort of ticked all the boxes for me. And that's why I sort of chose it. And I wanted to go out of my comfort zone. So I thought China's pretty out of my comfort zone. Being from the southeast of England, it was definitely different.
Mhm. Well, we're actually going to get onto culture shock in a bit later on, so that was quite a nice segue. It's like you've done this before, man. So did you have any sort of Cantonese or Mandarin before you headed over? How easy was it to assimilate in general? Because you've spoken there about meeting teachers from all over the world. What was it like at first? I mean, it must have been quite daunting to sort of head over there, not impromptu as such, but so it was something that you thought about. But yeah, kind of talk us through those first few weeks, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, I I'm quite good at being in situations I haven't been in before. I'm quite adaptable, so it was always a strength. So I knew that the worst case is I won't enjoy it and I'll fly home. So I went in sort of very open minded, just like let's see. I did not know how to speak Chinese at all. Didn't do any research on how to speak Chinese. I knew how to say hello, and that was it. Um,
Mhm.
Now, the company I worked for, when I arrived, I got picked up at the airport and taken to a hotel where I had 2 weeks at the hotel. And I was also onboarded with about 20 other teachers. So it was very easy. You got to the hotel and there were 20 other teachers from America, from all over, and you're there for 2 weeks with them. You go to onboarding with them at a head office of whatever school you're teaching with. Um, so that helped, I think, with the sort of immediately getting there because you have 20 other people that are in the same situation. So you're not just like a deer in headlights. So you walk around together the first day, you check out the city. So that helped, I would say. I think it would have been a lot tougher if I was by myself, not knowing what to do. So it made it quite easy in the sense of sort of not knowing the language. Most places are happy for you to just point and say, "I want this," which you can learn. Even someone who wasn't very good at learning Chinese, I got the basics, so I could order a coffee. I could
Mhm.
just about, and I met teachers that had been there for 2 or 3 years who would just do it for me, which was also nice. So yeah, I would say it's very much case by case, I think, but certainly for me, I took to it like a duck to water, I would say.
Amazing. So describe how it worked over in China. So you say that you worked for a company. Now, was that a case of you would do classes in different schools? I guess the first question is how did that sort of work, and what was the education system like over there compared to here? Like, what are the sort of major differences that you noticed anyway?
So I worked for one school. I sort of had my own training center, they call it, and at the start, I didn't even have to teach. I was for the first couple of weeks, I was just watching other people teach. Um,
Okay.
and that was pretty much it. And then, I mean, I was unlucky actually. Normally, you with who I was with anyway, you um, watch for a week, and then you'll do some classes with a teacher. So you would teach half of the lesson, they would teach half. They would give you pointers. But
Mhm.
when I actually arrived, after I'd seen some classes, they desperately needed a teacher to cover, and they didn't have anyone. So they were like, "Look, this isn't what we normally do, but here's a class, go teach it." Um,
Right. Okay.
so I walked into a class of 15, no, I think there was only 12 4 year olds who didn't know me. And I walked in, and three of them immediately started crying. Um,
Never a good start.
and I just sort of had to wing it, if I'm honest. So I was dropped in the deep end, but after that, it just for me became easy because I dealt with no preparation, not knowing what I was doing, never taught a class before. So after that, everything else was easy. So I think sometimes jumping in the deep end is the best way of doing it. Your first class is always probably going to be the one you're most nervous about. And then after that, it just becomes second nature. By the end of it was, I knew exactly what I was going to teach, how I was going to teach it. And I picked it up quite quick. I would say after about a month, I had no sort of anxious waits before a class or anything like that. I was just ready to go.
Mm-hmm. I think that's going to really, really help quite a lot of folk who are going to be listening to this or watching this, actually, because I think, I mean, imagine even if you've done a TEFL qualification, there'll still be people who have those kind of nerves, like, okay, but I've got the theory, but can I actually teach? You know, like, am I going to be any good at this? And I guess like knowing that you have to go in at the deep end, like you have to have that sort of first scary kind of moment. I mean, that's. I think people are going to really pick up something from that.
And in sort of speaking more to that, one thing that really helped me was someone told me, when you were a kid, did you ever question your teachers? If they said something that was a little bit, it doesn't matter because you're the teacher. So if you go in thinking that and think, when I was 10, 12, even when you're teaching adults, you're the teacher. You decide how the class goes. If something goes wrong, you laugh about it and you move on. And I think some of the best teachers adapt to it, adapt to the students. You've got students that are really rowdy, play a game that means they can be rowdy whilst learning. If you've got a class, I had a class that was mainly girls, sort of 13 to 15 years old, and they just really like drawing. So every sort of activity, at the end, I let them draw something that was relevant to what we just learned. So, yeah, I think once you get over that initial sort of worrying about how a class will respond to you and realise that you're the teacher at the end of the day, it makes it a lot easier.
I think that's a really interesting point in there because obviously, I mean, you're suggesting that teachers should really try to adapt to the students as opposed to, I imagine there'd be a temptation when you start teaching to stick to a really rigid lesson plan and just kind of get through it like you're an actor learning lines, kind of. Maybe that's unfair, but would you say that's, I mean, in terms of building confidence, is that maybe the best thing that a new teacher can do, is just sort of try and absorb the atmosphere of a certain class and then say, okay, well, this is their strength, let's go with that? I mean, is that something you'd advise?
Yes, I wasn't much of a planner. Everyone has different ways of teaching.
Uh-huh.
I very much didn't plan, maybe as much as some. I mean, some of my colleagues, for instance, used to get annoyed with me because they were like, "You don't plan. How do you do it?" I've been here a year and I still plan all my lessons, and as long as I know the content, I can teach it. So I was very much that teacher. But then there were teachers that religiously planned out every activity, whereas I would just sort of go in, not know exactly what I'm going to do, but no, I've got to cover this. And as long as I got it covered by the end of the lesson, that was achieved. So yeah, I think it's a case by case. There were lots of teachers with very different. I think at the beginning you need to stick to a lesson plan. I did at the start. But I very quickly realised that I was wasting time on lesson plans when I could be doing other stuff, making new games, doing other stuff that was going to help the class that I was teaching. Because you'll have a game that works great for one class and then you're teaching the same content with another class and you can't do it the same way. So you can plan, but you also have to react to the class.
And so, obviously, you come to China as a foreign teacher, and you talked about the students there. I just wanted to ask specifically, because we've spoken to a couple of guests who've they've taught all over the place. So one of our guests taught in Cambodia, another taught in Vietnam, and they said there's a real culture of respect for teachers. Like teachers are they're not like pop culture figures, but like there's a certain reverence. Would you say, I mean, were the students really keen to learn about the UK and about the kind of the culture that you grew up in, as well as the language? How obviously making generalizations isn't particularly helpful, but largely speaking, would you say the students were respectful, were really keen to absorb things? What was it? What was it like?
Yes, the Chinese culture is very much you respect your elders, you respect teachers compared to the UK. I, for instance, would not teach in the UK. I genuinely wouldn't. If I got offered something, I would not do it. In China, there was so much respect. The students wanted to learn. They wanted to, like you said, they were interested in your life. They wanted to know what it was like to live in England. Some of them were planning on going to, certainly my teenage classes, some of them wanted to go to America or the UK to for university. So it was very much like they wanted to be a sponge for you to give them as much as possible. But yeah, in the sense of I didn't have any, apart from sort of young children that would play up, the respect was next level, I would say. And that was one of the things that sort of shocked me was how when you went into a classroom, they were there because they sort of had to be there because their parents were telling them that they had to go. But yeah, it was different to the UK. Yeah, it was very respectful.
And obviously, coming from the south of England, were there any particular sort of cultural touchstones that you would use to help, during your lessons? So, obviously, things like the Premier League is massive in China. There's films and there's music that's huge over there too. Was there anything in particular that students wanted to use or that you wanted to use that was particularly kind of from your upbringing? Was there anything like that, or is that a bit of a reach?
For the younger students, no, because what you're teaching them is a lot more basic. You're teaching them how to go to a shop and buy food, how to count numbers, phonics. You can't really deviate too much from the script. But certainly the teenage classes, once you hit sort of 13 to 16 to 18-year-olds, you very much have to find something that they're interested in. So one of my classes, for instance, they were, I don't know, 15, 16, but they used to play a mobile game. And they were big into it. They were really big into it. So I used to go in 10 minutes before and play the game with them and play against them. And then I would sort of get them to talk to me about the tactics of the game in English. So yeah, you find common ground that you like. I mean, similar to teachers in the UK, I guess. If you've got teenagers that are really into a music genre, you do some research on the genre so that you've got something to talk to them about. And that conversational, not just from a textbook, is going to teach them more than if you're just reading something from a book. And what I used to do, I mean, China obviously has a firewall, so you need a VPN to access anything. What I used to do in my classes, certainly with teenagers, if there was something that I wanted to show them that I didn't have access to, I would just link my phone to the smart TV in the school and go on YouTube through the VPN. Now, maybe in certain schools you wouldn't be able to do that, but I just did it because for me, if I can show them something that's going to click with them, I'm gonna show it. And most countries, China's the only place where you even have to worry about what you show in the sense of through VPNs and stuff. But obviously, it was academic based. I wasn't just showing them football matches. But yeah, there's ways to teach, and yeah, a lot of it through video and stuff. We had this really. I remember we had a section of the course, and they were 17-year-olds, and it was on magic, which is actually not that interesting to teach. And the actual books that were supplied to me were terrible, and it was just a dreadful section of this book. So I just went on YouTube and found like real magic and showed them that, and then was like, right, I want you to create your own magic sort of show. So I worked around it. There's certain things that you look at the book and you're like, this is just not going to work. So you find a way around it.
Mm-hmm. That's that's particularly interesting. We're going to get into kind of creativity and kind of your own experiences having studied music production, that kind of thing. We'll get into that a wee bit later on. So I think there's an interesting thread there. But so you spoke earlier about how easy it was to sort of assimilate, but when you were kind of on your own and getting used to everything, like the moments when you were sort of by yourself and going, like, "Oh wow, I've moved to China," was there? I mean, was there a culture shock? And what would you
Yeah,
say are what are the main kind of everyday cultural differences between home and a major Chinese city?
yeah. I mean, there definitely was. I mean, we couldn't walk anywhere in public without being stared at for long periods of time, and especially on the subway. The subway is a busy place, especially in Shanghai, incredibly busy. I think it's the second most efficient subway apart from in Tokyo. So it's really good at what it does, but it's very busy. And you'd walk onto the platform and you'd have 300 people just stare at you. And in England, when you stare at someone, if they look at you, you normally look away. Uh,
Mhm.
in China, they don't. They'll just carry on staring. And
Right.
I lived with a guy with long hair from California,
Mhm.
um, and a guy from New York, and we basically had photo shoots whenever we went out together. Like we
Right.
would, oh yeah, we would have a queue of people wanting to take pictures with us. So it was almost like you were a celebrity. And this is in Shanghai, which is used to
Is
foreigners, but we looked like three very different sort of foreigners. So altogether, it was like the perfect storm. So I know when we were looking for a house, because I lived with them, we had an estate agent meet us at this flat or apartment.
Mhm.
Um, and as soon as he met us, he was on the phone. And then two more estate agents came over, and then two more. There was five, I think, in the end. And instead of showing us the house, they just wanted pictures with us. Well, we were holding these estate agents up, like the three of us, and getting pictures. And we just wanted to see the house, but they were loving it. And we'd only been there like 3 or 4 days, so it was quite new to us, but quite cool. But yeah, that's the biggest shock is everyone looking and staring and wanting to be involved. And you'd get kids that would come up to you and want a picture, and then the whole family would get, it was crazy.
Mhm.
So that was the biggest shock. And I guess slightly harder was if you want food, you really have to sort of just go in and ask. But if you don't know Chinese, you can't really ask too many questions. So you just have to sort of try and see. I mean, the food was incredible. I loved it. So it wasn't actually too bad because whatever I had, I pretty much was like, this is amazing. But yeah, that initial sort of couple of weeks trying the food and getting used to ordering something when someone doesn't understand you is a challenge, but quite a good challenge. You learn to improvise. You learn to point and smile and say the right things. A lot of it's body language. Even if you can't speak the language, you walk in, you say, "I want this." You point at it, and then that's it. You get it. And a lot of them want to try their English. So you'll go
Mhm.
in and say something in Chinese, and then they'll say something in broken English. So you've got me trying to speak Chinese very badly. You've got them trying to speak English very badly, and you come
Mhm.
to a middle ground. So it's always fun. You might not get what you wanted to order. Quite often, I'd go in and I'd want an iced coffee, and it would come and it would be a hot coffee, and you just take it and you're like, okay, I got it wrong. I didn't say it right that time, and then you try again. So yeah, trial and error, I think, as well. But
Mhm.
yeah, with the culture shock thing, everyone's different, but it's you always think of it as worse than it actually is, and you can still have your creature comforts. Like in the hotel, I would put on my favorite show, um, just to make me feel like I was still not completely out of my element.
Mhm. I'm just trying to imagine a scenario where we'll talk about you coming back from China, but just like going from being sort of kind of local celebrity to just going back to your shop and like the local shop wherever you live, and it's just been like, oh, no one wants a photo. Okay, weird, but
Yeah,
that would have been quite strange. Um, so kind of going back to the sort of post university days, you decided that you want to do TEFL. How quick was the process of completing your qualification and then finding a job? I mean, was it quite a fast?
I think I got offered a job while I was doing my course. So I think from initially saying, okay, I'm going to do a TEFL course and go, it was probably 3 months. But a lot of that was visa. The visa for China, I had to go to the embassy. There was some processes that made it a little bit longer than it could have been, let's say. But yeah, I would say about 3 months from starting the course to flying out and actually being there. It was about 12 weeks.
Right. Okay. So really not that long
No?
going from sort of decision to moving. I mean, that's pretty incredible, really. I was going to ask you about the visa process, but we kind of covered that now. So yeah, as we say, kind of, and as you covered in your introduction, you studied music production, which you'd probably admit yourself is an unusual path to teaching English. But you've got the qualifications, you've got the experience to prove that it works. What would you say to someone who's listening to this or someone who's watching this who doesn't feel they have the sort of quote unquote relevant background to teach English?
I don't think you need like any educational background to be able to do it. Mm-hmm. Once you actually get in, you know, you take a TEFL course, you get all of you get used to lesson planning, you get used to all the theory behind it. But until you're in a classroom, you probably won't know whether it's for you. And I would say in China, certainly our company, there were a few people that flew out, they tried it for 2 weeks, a month, and they were like, do you know what? I can't do this. And they flew home. It's very much until you're actually in a classroom, you won't fully know. You can prepare, you can, you know, do all of the research in the world, but until you're in there, as long as you can deal with people, because, you know, whether you're teaching adults, whether you're teaching children, I taught 3-year-olds up to 18-year-olds. As long as you can have fun with people, you can engage with people, build a rapport, you'll be fine. And most people can do that, whether you socialize with friends, whether you socialize with family. As long as you can deal with people, you'll probably be fine. Even if, you know, my degree was not at all relevant to any form of education. But I got out there and I think I was a good teacher. The only reason I stopped was because I in myself didn't want to continue it. It wasn't that I didn't enjoy teaching. It was just that I was at a point in my life where I was like, do you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. But I got one of the biggest benefits was you saw someone progress. You know, a 6-year-old that when you first started teaching them was crying when you walked into the room, to sometimes it would only take 2 or 3 lessons and they'd be running up to you and giving you a special sticker because they, you know, love you as a teacher. So seeing that sort of development of students is really rewarding. You know, I've done lots of jobs, and in the sense of getting something out of it as well, it was one of the best for sort of at the end of the day thinking that was great. You see someone perform something that they'd worked hard on, and you're like, you know, you were the thing that made them do that. It's rewarding.
Absolutely. That's brilliant. So we're just going to take a quick break now. And a fantastic Erin from the TEFL org is going to tell you about something special we're running for podcast listeners. So listen out for that.
Hi there. We hope you're enjoying listening to I Taught English Abroad, a podcast by the TEFL org. Hopefully you're feeling inspired by what you're hearing, and maybe you're wondering if you can teach English as a foreign language too. Well, the answer is yes. And as an exclusive reward for listening to this podcast, we're offering you 50% off TEFL courses, plus a free lesson plans pack to help you get started. Just use the code PODCAST at checkout. With that discount, you can get TEFL qualified with the world's most accredited TEFL course provider and learn how to teach from teachers. With dedicated tutor support, lifetime access to our TEFL Job Centre, and friendly advice from our team of experts, you could be teaching English abroad or online within just a few months. Signing up couldn't be simpler. Just visit www.tefl.org and add the code PODCAST at checkout to get your discount. That's www.tefl.org. Start your TEFL adventure today.
All right, and we're back with Luke Bartsch. How's this going, Luke? Has this been okay for you? It hasn't been an intimidating or difficult experience for you thus far?
No, it's been really easy. I like talking about it as an experience. It was something that I really enjoyed. It was something that helped my career. Working for the company, and I have to say and talk about my story most days, so it doesn't really get boring, but I guess I like the sound of my own voice a bit too much.
Well, for this exact hour or so, that's absolutely fine. So it's funny you mentioned that, actually, because my next question is about working with us here at TEFL.org. So, I mean, what is it you do, and what do you enjoy most about it?
Yeah, so I work in business development, which is really just sort of looking at partnerships that we have with schools and organisations. It's quite a far-reaching sort of role. It's sort of every meeting I have is different with the school, what they're looking for, whether they're looking for teachers, whether they're looking to promote, whether they're looking for actual TEFL courses for their teachers. So really, I just do that. Really, and I really enjoy it. I speak to schools. I get to get as much exposure of TEFL to relevant schools. And at the minute, I'm speaking to a lot of sixth form schools within the UK that are looking at getting their sixth formers TEFL trained. And for me, that's great, because I didn't know about TEFL until I did my own research after university. If I had known before, maybe it's something that I would have planned and looked forward to whilst I was studying, as a sort of, this is my way out of the UK, of wherever I am, where I can go traveling and I can do this. So for me, it's the perfect job, because I get to stay in an industry that I like, but also get other people TEFL trained. And once, they have got a course with us, they can go and teach online, they can teach in China where I taught. So the options are sort of laid out to you once you finish the course. And that's what I like about it. It's nice to be able to give that to people that might be in the same situation as me, got a degree but can't get a job with the degree, and they're like, okay, what can I do here? And then the world of TEFL can be there as a stepping stone.
It's interesting you said, because we spoke to Jenny, who's another colleague of ours at the TEFL.org, and from what I gathered from speaking to her is that the TEFL world is bigger. It's obviously it's for teachers, but it's also bigger than that as well. And you can go on to do sort of different things with TEFL, and she said she got a great sense of kind of reward from the fact that she was helping people to do what she'd gone and done and what she'd really enjoyed doing, and it was, as I say, rewarding to kind of do that. Is that the same feeling you get? Know that you're helping people to do what you did in China, and I suppose making it easier for people to know about the options that are there. I mean, are those particular motivations for you?
Yeah. I mean, that's why I wanted to stay within the space. When I originally wanted to sort of go out and teach, my original thing was, I'd go into recruitment, which would be similar. You interview people, you see if they're a good fit for the position, and then you go through the process with them. So I always thought I would go into recruitment. And now, not directly, but because I work with schools and work on partnerships, I look for companies that are great that we can offer on our website and say, hey, look, you finish your certificate. Here's some schools that we recommend. Here's, you want to go teach in China. You want to go teach in South Korea. Here's companies that you can go and do that with. So yeah, definitely massively rewarding. Whenever I speak to schools and they talk about their students being interested, I'm always like, yeah, do it. A lot of people don't know, and I think that's what it's what our job is, to make more people aware of it as an option. And it's not just people that are students that have just finished uni. Sometimes it's a career change. I met loads of teachers out in China that were 35, 40, up to 50, 55 years old that just wanted a change from their normal 9 to 5. And for me, my work hours were 2 p.m. till 8 p.m. on the weekdays. But actual teaching hours was only 2 to 3 hours a day. And then the weekends were 9 to 5. So I could do what I want. I had so much time. Compared to a 9 to 5 job, it was very much, I could have a lay-in, which was nice. Go and do something in the morning and then arrive at work at 2 p.m. And that's normally the standard sort of, it depends on country. If you go to Japan, the hours are longer than somewhere in China, but certainly in China, you get a lot of time off. And it means you can explore where you are in Asia and wherever you choose to be. Most people want to actually explore. On their weekends, they want to fly somewhere. They want to get a train somewhere. So you can do that as well.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's a really interesting point because, about that kind of work-life balance, because I think people, and I was probably guilty of this assumption myself, we sort of assume that, if you're going over to a different country to do a job, it was all about the job. And in a sense it is, but it sounds like what you've described there is a really good work-life balance. And so, I mean, would you say through your own lived experience that you still get to do all the things that you could do if you were there, traveling, but with the added bonus of like really doing some of your career?
Yeah, I mean, for reference, I was there for a year and a half and I cooked my own meal twice in a year and a half. Because I went to restaurants we finished at 8 p.m. and there was 10 of us that had just finished our shift, and we go to a bar, we go to a place every day. And because the cost of living was that, I could do that every day. I can't do that in the UK. I can't go out every day in the UK. For one, I can't afford it. But in China, I could. And these were nice places. We were going to rooftop bars every night, and the entry was like 60p. In London, it will be 60 quid entry. And there was a place we used to go to every Wednesday. And it was, I can't remember the price, but it worked out to something like 20p a chicken wing. So me and my mates would go and just order 30 chicken wings. Every Wednesday, we'd just go, get a beer and just have 30 chicken wings. So it was very much like every day you can do something different. And we didn't just, go to bars. We did trips away. I went to mountains, beautiful. I went to the Great Wall of China. We flew about Asia. There was so many options. But in a city like Shanghai, there was so much to do. There was so many places to go, beautiful gardens to go. There was so much. I found every day I would do something different. So it was like traveling. You still have to work, and there were some days like Saturday and Sunday I would work 9 till 5. So Friday night I would go out till 3 a.m. and then be like, I've got to get up and teach a class of 4-year-olds at 9 o'clock. So yeah, there were certain things that, maybe I shouldn't have gone out on the Friday night, but I mean, I could get by on 2-3 hours sleep. So I was lucky in that sense. So I lived my life to the fullest while I was there. Let's say that.
Oh, quite right. So if you could go back into the teaching sphere, and you could go anywhere in the world, visas, money, all other factors, not a factor. Apart from China, where would you go? Was there anywhere else you had your eye on?
Yeah, Japan. I wanted to go and teach in Tokyo, but it was sort of one of them things that when I looked at all of the factors, I wanted to travel and enjoy myself. And you can still do that in Japan. I met lots of teachers that had a great time, but I did meet some teachers that said it was a lot more work. The hours were more extreme. The cost of living's higher. So for me to do what I did in Japan, I would only be able to do it once or twice a week as opposed to every day in China. So it was sort of, I still would have liked to have done it. And should COVID not have hit, should I had to come back to the UK, maybe I would have transferred to a company in Japan and done it. But yeah, I'll probably go and visit Japan. It's certainly on my list, but maybe as a holiday, so I can really, just experience it for what it is. Yeah.
I mean, that makes sense, and you're definitely not alone in that. I mean, always you probably encounter it in your work as well. There's there's a huge appeal in Japan. I mean, it's got to be, if it's not the most popular TEFL destination, it's surely top three. You actually mentioned something about COVID cutting your time short in China. This is kind of last sort of heavier question, if you like. What was that like? What was the kind of emotional impact of that? Because obviously you would have been disappointed, but what's it like transitioning to life in sort of COVID lockdown in England when you were just in this like buzzing kind of metropolis? You've been teaching classes of all different ages. It's all going on. You're able to go out all the time. Like, what's it like? I guess like what's the kind of mental impact of going from that to like lockdown in England?
It was horrific.
Mm,
It genuinely was. I'm not sugarcoating it. The culture shock coming back was worse than going out there,
right.
because maybe it was heightened because of lockdown and because I couldn't do anything. But it was brutal. Yeah, and for me as well, I was locked down in an apartment with my girlfriend at the time, and we couldn't leave like at all. So we were there for like 2 weeks, and we were getting all this news, and my family were calling like, "Are you okay?" Didn't know what was going on, and basically saw that flights were being cancelled, had lots of teachers on like group chats that we were in saying, "Oh, I've left, flights being cancelled." So from deciding I was going to leave to leaving, it was something like 12 hours. So I made a decision. I got a taxi from the apartment I was in to my apartment, packed a bag, left all of my stuff. Like, I had loads of stuff, like even like little things like a TV and like all my clothes, most of my clothes, and just left. Within 12 hours, I was at the airport. And when we got to the airport, there were people in hazmat suits. All of the flights were cancelled on the board apart from one, which was the flight to Dubai, which I was getting on to fly from Dubai to the UK. So it was I fled the country basically. And it was 12 hours of planning from we've got to leave to leave. And then I was in England, and it wasn't lockdown. So I walked through the airport and I said to everyone, I was expecting to be questioned. I was expected to be like, "Where have you come from?" And I just walked through. And I said to all my friends and my family, I was like, "It's really serious, guys." And they were like, "Oh, no, it'll be fine." I went to the pub like a couple of days and they were like, "No, it won't come here. It won't come here, mate." And I literally said to everyone, I was like, "It will. I've just come from there." Like, there was no like barrier. There was no questions. There was no test. And it came. So yeah, it was challenging to say the least. Luckily, the place I worked at let me fly home and continue to be employed as an online teacher. So all the classes were moved online. I was teaching the same students I was teaching in Shanghai, but online, which was quite weird actually, because the school was closed for a couple of weeks. And then they made the decision to go online. And basically, I was having Zoom calls with all of my classes. And they were like interested. They were like, "Where are you?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm back in London." And they were like, "Oh, no way." So yeah, it was challenging. But yeah, it was a bigger culture shock than going to China, coming back, which people don't talk about. But once you come back, one of the good things was I could get whatever food I wanted. I put on like 2 stone over lockdown purely because I was used to not being able to have everything. I came home and I could just go to the supermarket and buy absolutely everything. And that's what I did. And I just sat and ate whilst lockdown was going along. So yeah, it was certainly not the ideal situation, but I got through it. That's the main thing.
Mm-hmm. There's not many people who can say that they were sort of at the world center of a pandemic and then and had to negotiate getting out of there. I mean, it's a fascinating story that. So we'll finish with the sort of heavier topics now. Now, I think maybe one of the first conversations we had was about MF Doom, or it was certainly about hip hop because you've got an MF Doom tattoo. And as obviously you've got that history in kind of music production as well, so I have to know, was there any music from China, maybe specifically hip hop, it doesn't have to be, was there any music that you found in China that you listen to now and that people should know about?
The short answer is no. Now,
Okay.
the reason for that is I when I went there, I thought that I'd be introduced to, different music. But certainly in Shanghai, it was very much like foreign bars that play foreign music. So one of the weirdest, I went to a boiler room in Shanghai, which had like techno. I also went to see Swindle at a club in Shanghai, who's from the UK. So it didn't actually change that much. And I did some research. My background is sort of grime and grime instrumentals and stuff like that. And there was a scene out there that had like grime instrumentals, but I didn't find it. And it's very much like you really have to do digging if you want to. So yeah, it's quite a boring answer, but yeah, no, not really. You would hear music. I mean, you would go to places and they'd be playing like traditional Chinese music and some of the stuff, because sort of the music I grew up with was instrumentals and stuff. I heard stuff that I thought, like I could use that and sample it and make a grime instrumental out of it. So like there were things that sort of were interesting, but it wasn't a huge thing out there. I think I was so sort of I was traveling, I was enjoying socializing. There wasn't really time. I didn't make any music whilst I was in China. And I planned to. When I originally went there, I was like, I'm going to make a album inspired by China. And I was just enjoying China too much to actually make an album. But maybe one day.
Yeah, we'll never rule it out, man. Right, cool. So finally, it's maybe the toughest question of the whole podcast. And as I say, you've been a fantastic guest. It's been great to learn about your experiences in China. So final poser. I'll give you a second to think about this one if you want. What's the best MF Doom project?
That's a contentious answer. And if I say, Mad Villainy is probably, but I like food, I like the classics. But yeah, I mean, you can't not say it just because it was amazing. But I like it all. There's not a bad Doom tune, I think. So when you get to it, as long as you've got an artist that doesn't make anything bad, you can't really moan. If you asked me what was his worst song, I couldn't tell you. So that's a good place to be. What about you?
Probably Bad Villainy or Doomsday. Although,
yeah,
I think. Sorry, Operation Doomsday. Yeah, I think Born Like This is underrated.
Yeah, I think it's all underrated personally. But yeah, I mean, there's just so many good songs that I don't know. But Mad Villainy, if I was going to recommend it to someone, I would recommend that, because I think it's a good sort of to dip your toes in. Or food is good for dipping your toes in, because it's, some of it's quite funny and people can relate to it a little bit easier than some of the other stuff. But yeah, I mean, that's just Doom as well. If you look at all of his other aliases as well, you could go down a whole wormhole and we could probably speak for a lot longer on that.
I know. Well, my other podcast about Victor Vaughan is scheduled for the winter, but look, it's been fantastic talking to you, man. Really, really appreciate you coming on. And do we have anything you want to promote or want to tell people about the TEFL world?
No, I mean, I'd just say if you're nervous, if you're thinking, is it for me? The only way to know is to do it. A lot of people will think about it and then maybe not bite the bullet and do something else, and then maybe think, maybe I should have done it. If you just go and do it, if you don't like it, you can do something else. Your career is, anything you want. And I mean, to have on your CV that you've tried something new, you've gone to a new country, even if it doesn't work out, you come 6 months later because teaching wasn't for you. It shows that you can adapt and that you can go out of your comfort zone. So even if you don't want to be a teacher for the rest of your life like me, there's still merit in doing it. And I would say try it, because it is a lot of fun and you will get a lot of experiences from work and from not being at work that will sort of stay with you forever, I think. And that's what everyone should look to do, right? Stuff that's exciting enough that in 10, 20 years you remember it. And I've got a memory for every day I was in China that, I still think about and just smile. So, yeah, that's what I'd say.
Brilliant. Well, thanks a lot, man. It's been great having you on.
Great. Cheers. Have a good one.